Hi everyone. Welcome to the second last session of the last day of SCxSC, which is the Meet the Regulator session. I am Azrina, your moderator for the session. Together with me is none other than Mr. Chin Wei Min, Executive Director of Digital Strategy and Innovation of Securities Commission of Malaysia. I'm sure he is more than capable to answer all the questions that you may pose to him. But just to give you a background to this session, this will be the third time we are having such a session as part of the SCxSC conference. The first session was held in the SC building itself back in 2019, where it was very much a physical event still. It was, we decided to incorporate this session more like a chill chat session where audiences of SCxSC can really interact with the regulator and ask us any questions that they may have, right, about regulations, developments on the fintech space and others. So here we are. We can't promise we are able to answer all the questions that you may pose, but we will try our best to do so. We have allocated about 45 minutes, 1 hour, 1 hour for the session. But if you just open the Slido for the session. To participate, all you need to do is select the Meet Regulator on the drop-down menu of the Slido on the right side of your screen. So just ask any questions. Do take this opportunity to ask whatever questions that you may have. Right, so women, welcome to the session. Perhaps before we go on to the questions that people have asked, perhaps maybe you can tell us about where the market is at now, right? Back in 2016, we were heavily involved in setting up the digital agenda for the capital market, which is, for those who are not too familiar, the digital agenda is actually a high-level digital strategy that the SC has set out for the capital market to achieve 4 main objectives. 1 is access to financing. 2 is to allow more investors to come into the capital market. 3, to augment institutional markets. And last but not least, developing synergistic ecosystem. So maybe start with the access to financing bit. Women, where are we at? Are you happy with the progress so far? Where do you see the direction of the markets in relation to access to financing for the capital market?
Azrina, thanks for this, and thank you for the kind introduction. For the access to financing, I think it's one of the first agenda that we have done as part of the industry, digital agenda. We have actually since rolled out the framework for equity crowdfunding and then peer-to-peer financing, and most recently, the initial exchange offering. I have to say that I think, we have been progressing pretty well, building the momentum, and I'm especially heartened to see that we have played our part during the pandemic period. I think the whole last 18-20 months, I think as an industry, we have actually accelerated the whole digitization's effort tremendously. I mean, helped by the circumstances, but I think we are definitely heartened to see that the adoption and using this particular alternative financing channel has been doing well. To give you a bit of a share, I mean, as of I think late end August, I think we have total fundraising since inception is about 2.2 billion ringgit, helping close to about 4,000 micro and SMEs. So we have definitely played our part. And when I said about the whole pandemic period, just looking at just if you look at March last year all the way to middle or late till Q3 this year, we have fundraised more than 1.3 billion ringgit between ECF and P2P, signaling how we have been helping the micro and SMEs who were, if you like, to some extent constrained in access to some of the financing to tie them over during this difficult period, in terms of working capital or even capital for growth. I think we have done fairly well in terms of providing that. We have seen, if you look at this year, look at the first half of this year for peer-to-peer financing, we have fundraised more than what we fundraised total, right? So we have, I think, first 2 quarters this year, we have fundraised about 530 million compared with peer-to-peer the whole year last year. And last year is already, we have actually growth of 20% from the year before. So we are definitely seeing healthy growth in that area. And on the equity crowdfunding front, definitely, obviously, I guess because of the whole circumstances, we have seen tremendous growth in equity fundraising side in 2020. We're also seeing the continued momentum for this year. So I think as a whole, market-based financing, I think, has played its part in terms of doing that. As to the second area, as you mentioned about investor participation, again, we did see the whole new normal, the adoption of the digital capability for investors to participate. A couple of stats, I think our digital investment management, I think right now we have 8 providers, which has, I think, asset under management close to R1 billion. So I think definitely very happy to see that we have actually increasing the momentum for the investor to have one more channel, one more avenue to invest. And I think just this year alone, we have added 150,000 new investors. And last year, we also have a similar good numbers. In fact, I think last year has a bit slightly higher, but I think we haven't closed the year yet. So I think we're again good to see the growth. As part of the investor participation agenda, we also have part of the digital asset exchanges. Again, I think as mentioned by our chairman during the opening remarks, we have, I think, as of recently, we crossed, I think, since 2019, we have, I think, transacted more than 1 billion transactions. And some of you would have read the news. I think we have actually exceeded 16 billion ringgit worth of transaction in the digital asset exchange. Again, I think to a great extent, providing one more avenue for our investor, one more, if you like, product set that they can invest. And I think it's heartened to see where that goes. In terms of the synergistic collaborations, in terms of the industry ecosystem, we did see, I think there are 2 big industry groups that we actually been doing. One is Bridge, which is Broker Industry Digitization Group, and FMDG, which is Fund Management Digitization Group. Similarly, I think it played a very significant part during the whole pandemic period. If you looked at, you know, at the peak of it, we have SC have facilitated a virtual annual general meeting, allowing a lot of our public listed companies do that. We have good success last year. I think this year we have seen a lot more company adopting fully virtual methods. Again, we expedited through new guidelines and new capability just to make sure that happens. Again, since the formations of the Bridge, which is the Broker Industry Digitization Group, we have facilitated the higher online settlement payment amount so that to facilitate the online transaction. Again, we see a very healthy growth in that area as well. Likewise, I think this year we're looking more on the fund management overall industry digitization effort, and we're seeing more efforts that has come through. I think you will probably hear more. I think more of that in the news domain. One last thing I would mention is so the online only broker, or digital only broker, as well as activity within the whole space of using online channel to do fund management, to buy unit trusts. Again, we have seen very positive growth in that area. I think for this year, there's like a more than 30% signed up in terms of the whole online broking space. So I think that's area we see a greater adoption, I guess, new normal. I hate to use the word, but I think we are getting, you know, a lot more adoption due to the current circumstances, but we see some of these trends are here to stay even post pandemic period.
So back to you know the second goal, which is to increase investor participation, and we've seen how digitization has lowered the barrier, increased access, and there is, some would say, less friction for people to come in and invest. For those who are not too savvy, do you see sometimes there is need to have some friction to make them like think before they easily invest, or what are your thoughts on that? You know, the boon and bane against you know, the ability for people to easily invest before they can make an informed investment decision.
Yeah, Azrina, you touch on a very good point here. Again, I know this is a fintech conference. You know, it's not what we are not advocating is everybody got to adopt digital, right? So an example would be like, my mother generation, then, she prefer, when she trade, she prefer to talk to her remisier and she want that personal touch. So again, as highlighted in our Capital Market Master Plan 3, right, is what we're trying to go to is not one size fits all, right? So it's had to be something for some people. So from that standpoint, I think the digital capability offer the option, one more option or more options for our investor to invest in that. Again, if you're not comfortable to be self-directed, you need advice, seek out your advisor. If you feel comfortable with the digital channel in terms of how you consume information, how do you use research, how do you use your mobile app to put your investment, I think we encourage that, right? But that doesn't mean there is still the role for unit trust agent, there is still a role for broker remisier, there's still a role for all the corporate advisors who provide advice. Likewise, for digital, it's just different ways to interact, consume your financial services. Again, another area that I just now neglected to mention, we also put in place the e-services platform from last year, which we happen to see we are already two provider, right? So this is actually leveraging the current electronic channel to actually broaden the access to the capital market products to our investor. Again, if you're not, I call it the digital generation, you're not comfortable using the digital channel, you have many other means, whether through a face-to-face with your agents or with your broker or your advisors, or you can actually go through the web, or you can do online, you can do call center. So what I think we're trying to do here is avail the different channel for our investor to participate in our capital market activities.
Very good point there. You talked about the new normal. You talked about, since last year, MCO, the rise of digital adoption because people just needed to transact remotely, right? And there have been a rise of scams, a rise of, other cybersecurity thefts and things like that. What is the SC doing in order to address those such concerns in this regard?
Indeed, I think we are seeing an increasing trend for the online scam and frauds, and it's actually very worrying. This is where I think SC has actually put a task force together for 2 years now to look at some of the illegal activities. But I want to separate that. So there is a fraud and scam part of it, then there is the unlicensed, unregistered activity, both of which are on the rise, right? So I think the whole scamming and the fraudulent activity, I think we are trying to educate our investor better. I think there's no simple way to do this except that you yourself, as an investor, as a consumer, need to know. On the other hand, SC is also play its role in terms of hopefully taking out some of these illegal activity where we want to be. We will be swift, we'll be targeted, we'll be efficient in terms of go after some of these illegal activities where we can. And this one, again, I encourage everybody, if you have actually come across these activities, please alert us, and then we will do the necessary and we'll follow up and we will do the necessary investigation. Again, this is a whole of society approach, this is a whole community approach, not just SC play its part. We hope our intermediary play their part, we hope the investor play their part, everybody play its part. I think then we will have a much healthier, growing community.
So also we have our investor alert list, right? Whenever we find any dodgy activities being offered by unlicensed people, then people in check can go to our website to see who are on those lists. So maybe it's time for us to take some of the questions that have come in. Yeah. Okay, there is a question about do we have, there's a question by Mr. Dave Chu. He asked whether do we have any fintech innovation index or cross-regulators assessment for our market versus in the region?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think the simple answer is probably we don't have an index. I mean, I can conceivably think about the need for some sort of innovation index, but I think we're going to look at what's the purpose for the index. But let me comment on the second question in terms of comparison between our peers and other jurisdiction. Again, I mean, each countries are different. I mean, when we started up, I think like when we started out the whole crowdfunding scene, we're also looking at, our objective is to help the micro and SMEs. So if you look at our regulatory framework, is very much geared towards helping the micro and SMEs in that domain. So a lot of the framework and regulation helps in that. And you look at Thailand when they started, right? I think or Indonesia for that matter, they started actually peer-to-peer financing first. Then only very recently, like last year, they only have equity crowdfunding. Again, it's catering to the local needs. I think a lot of these, I mean, we are a domestic regulator, right? So the idea here is look at what is the local business context. What are we doing have the most effect to our own local community and our markets. Again, I wouldn't say that what we have done should be applied to Singapore or Indonesia or Thailand or Philippines. Again, it's catering to the needs. Just like our digital asset exchanges, there is a time where there is a lot of activity. That's why we thought it's important. Then we put a regulatory framework together. I would say that. I like to at least think that we have played our part in terms of providing access to financing for micro SMEs. I understand and appreciate, for example, in Indonesia, the peer-to-peer financing actually cater to both personal, that means individual, as well as businesses. I do know that due to certain constraints in Thailand, the equity crowdfunding scene may not be as vibrant as ours, but I think they have since take off, and then some of the issues they want to address. Again, it's more about what the local market needs. We have, from a regulator standpoint, put in place a framework, as well as the market respond to the need for the local. So I think it's a bit apple and orange comparison, but I would like to think that if there are some innovation we think that we spotted in other markets that we think makes sense, I encourage technopreneur, entrepreneur on this audience, come forward to us. We should certainly want to understand about it and then put together some framework, or looking at our existing or maybe even new capability that we need in our marketplace to address specific gap or specific needs of our market. I think that would be how we see it.
So going back to digital assets, there have been a lot of questions, or perhaps confusion as to why, if I want to buy a digital asset, why am I limited to only those that are there in the digital asset exchanges that we register? Why just Bitcoin? Why just Ethereum or Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash and all that? Why not more?
Yeah. Again, like this, I mean, this space is a bit nuanced. I think the way I would see it as firstly, I think from we go back to our core mandate, right? It's about investor protection. So we wanted to make sure there is a proper framework in place. Secondly, I think from our point of view, in order to operate a market in a fair and orderly manner, we do want to make sure there's sufficient, in this case, liquidity, and to make sure there's sufficient price discovery that can happen within that. Our guideline right now doesn't, I mean, we encourage and there are stipulation clearly in the RMO guidelines in terms of what the criteria to be hosted in our local exchanges. So from that standpoint, we encourage any of our DEX operator who gauge the market needs, and there is sufficient, if there is a cost to list a new token. If there is such a business case and they want to list it, they can apply to us. So far, I mean, we have approved numerous of them. And if there is a need, I think the operator should come forward to us, and then we will assess accordingly based on the criteria set out in the guidelines. And then we would certainly welcome and would be happy to facilitate. I think the recent new tokens are applied by our DEX operators, and then we have actually assessed it expediently. And I assume the market, the operator have made their assessment in terms of what the market needs, what the cost to operate such a market cost effectively, and as such do that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, in relation to the digital asset space, Tim, will a question by Rui, will an NFT marketplace be required to be regulated by the SC in the future? Right? If not, how will SC maintain stability and trust to innovation in the blockchain-based industry?
Let me take the second question and we'll come back to NFT. I think from an SC perspective, we do not regulate technology. So I think certainly any technopreneur who wants to do all the new funky stuff on blockchain, we encourage that. I think so long as it's not in the regulated activity, meaning you're not doing fundraising, you're not pooling your money together for investment return, if you're not doing any of the secondary trading of some of this digital asset, I think then wouldn't come under. If you just use blockchain as a technology, you want to build the next generation cool new stuff, there is nothing stopping you from doing that activity. I think that's encouraged, and part of the reason why we're involved in the digital asset is to make sure there is a good local market to support that activity. But building a new technology or next generation technology that using blockchain or other technology, we definitely welcome and facilitate that, I think, but we don't regulate the technology space per se. I'll go back to NFT. Based on our current, and this is my personal view, I think we'll see how we go from there. I think based on what we have observed right now, I think Malaysia primarily is in the collectible, in terms of arts, music, and some sports. So firstly, in terms of the whole, I mean, there is a process of the like you said, the trading activity. It wasn't really much come under our purview right now, unless there is some activity. If you, an example could be that this is non-fungible token, but let's say a piece of art tied to a particular token. But if you say, I know this is a very high price piece, and we're beginning to say this NFT, if I kind of put an ERC20 and make it fungible such a way that you're crowding in, I don't know, another 10 investors to co-invest, then you are actually pulling the investment together, then it may actually then constitute a regulated activity. That means you are pulling together or you're fractionalizing, and I call it the financializations of the instrument. Then we will need to look at it. Again, for now, the way we have assessed it, this is akin to an auction market where you say willing buyer and willing seller. I don't think right now is there, but I think again we are continue to assess this space. We have yet to come to a final decisions in terms of what this space are, but I think this is where we have seen a lot of these are just involving collectibles, not really a securities instrument per se, but I know things may change. I know this thing changed very, very fast. So it involves what sort of activity it conducts. If it's under, if it's coming to the activity that is within the whole securities law, then certainly we would want to understand more. If not, then it's an activity, like your muda.my and all others. You should do whatever you need to do.
So what you're saying, as the people who want to understand better, so you fall back on our prescription order, right? So there are requirements in there that makes it the digital asset as prescribed securities. It's not clear cut. It's not. We're not saying that if you're a digital asset, it's straight away security. You've got to go back to the prescription order and see whether it amounts to the things that allow them to come within the regulated space, right? So that's for that. So there is a question on property crowdfunding, right? They wanted to know more about property crowdfunding. Are there any active platforms out there?
I mean, as of now, no. Very much, I think, again, I think this go back to, I think, 2 years ago when there is a government policy announced. I think one of these guidelines are meant to help our first-time home buyer through some sort of equity scheme to actually own their first homes. We have facilitated that by creating the regulatory framework for it. The end goal again is about allowing our first-time home buyer to have ability to own their first home in the process. I mean, not having to burden with as they kind of build up their financial capability at a later stage. Right? I think so long as you meet that objectives, I mean, we will welcome that. Again, like I said, this is, I mean, we are complementing the current existing financial systems, right? So, you know, if there are individuals who could do what they want to do in terms of the home mortgages, they should definitely go there. I think this is again to kind of responding to government policy in terms of helping our first-time home buyer at a limited time. Again, not just the issuer need to worry about, also investor, right? So there is a long tail risk, and if you look at the trends of our current peer-to-peer financing, right? I think most of our even the longest term notes is only 36 months, right? I think so there is that exposure in terms of the risk reward need to be balanced. I think that's an area we also look at.
Okay. A related question on, it's not really related, but this is to do with regulators, since this is a regulator session. Do regulators also share ideas with different jurisdictions? That's a question by Jem. Are most policies drafted within internally?
Well, I think the regulator community is actually very small, much smaller than most people think. I mean, there's each country probably at one or two. So we do have frequent sessions. I think, I mean, just on the whole innovation space, we have a global IOSCO Fintech group that we have regular calls. You know, we have a group particularly on the blockchain /ICO/crypto, which we frequently exchange notes. There's a broader group that talks about AMLA, that actually talk about money laundering. So that if you like, there is an industry area, then there's a horizontal, especially in the crypto space. I think there's a FATF about the most recent discussion all about travel rule and all, right? So I think we do exchange knowledges, and in fact, most of our policy as we shape it, firstly that we will definitely do a desktop jurisdictional benchmark. We look at what other people have done, and we also, where needed, we pick up the phone and then call our counterpart, and then to understand more, and to a great extent trying to learn the lessons, if we can, what other people has gone through. And sometimes if we were trying to not sure, I think we also have internal deliberation. We have many of the industry consultation. If you look at guidelines on digital asset, right, I think we have gone through in 2019 we have consultation, and then we put a guideline, and then in January, and then we let the industry familiarize with it before we put into force. So there is also not just talking to our regulator, but we also have a consultation in addition to letting our industry familiarize. So there is a multi-step approach in terms of how we hopefully looking at what the industry needs. But definitely in terms of exchanging ideas, I think there's no lack of it, whether it come from industry, whether it come from our peer regulator or our counterpart elsewhere. I think that certainly frequently happens.
I agree with you. I mean, in addition, we've also signed fintech bridges, right, with our fellow regulators, areas surrounding fintech. So there's a lot of exchange of ideas and all that on that space. And even in the APEC working group, we do have, APEC, whether it's digital assets, crowdfunding, we have workshops among the regulators. So this is really something that we continue to do as regulators. So a question on Islamic finance. Malaysia, this is a question by Kel. Malaysia being a leader in Islamic finance, what are the key areas fintech players in digital asset should look at to make our market more vibrant?
Sorry, repeat that. I missed that.
Okay. Malaysia being a leader in Islamic finance, what are some of the key fintech areas that our our players can look at in order to make our market more vibrant?
Yeah, I mean, this is again one of the main theme for this year, SC by SC. I think seeing a good growth in the whole fintech scene right now. We are trying to get into a bit more focus on Islamic fintech, and that's where we started with the whole accelerator program for Fitra this year. And if you go to the other track, you actually will have seen some of the demo of some of the participants. Again, I think the goal is to if you like, leverage on our leadership positions on the Islamic capital market, and hopefully have the element of fintech. Again, if you hear some of the discussion we have for the last 2-3 days, right, it's all about not just necessarily we're looking at innovation, not just technology, but it's also products, right? So we're looking at how can we be relevant and be able to assist and help some of the people who wants to do that. And again, this is not about, if you like, Islamicize a conventional product. So the idea here is, let's say social finance, how can we, take out the Maqasid principle, can it be applied, into the Islamic capital market, but maybe with the digital capability, how can they take it further, whether it's from access standpoint, whether it's in product innovation standpoint, or even in terms of the whole provision of it, and how do we, can we look at it differently? So this is an area we are certainly bullish and wanted to look forward to more innovation from access. That means how do we serve our end investor or end issuers in terms of product. Hopefully there are now clever ideas, and we have seen some part of that. I think I don't know, in the participant on the other side, right? I think looking at bookkeeping capability for some of our small farmers who today can't do. At the same time, if we know them what they do more, can we provide financing to help some of these farmers? So I think that's an area where we hope fintech will actually bring some of the innovation. Again, we talked about agriculture just now. I think today, in Malaysia, a lot of the farmers are generally aging. How can we bring young farmers, into the space? How can we involve our investment community into sectors like this? So this is where I see fintech play a role, bridging that gap in the place where, an area that needs financing versus the people who can provide the financing, and bridging them. Maybe to, a lot of the, our crowdfunding idea, whether is about flatten the structure, thereby I think providing that linkage. Again, technology can help in certain area, but also we're not just talking about the technological help, but we're also looking at new market structure, a new business model, hopefully enabled by technology. I think this is where I think hopefully that comes together nicely. Then we would have played our part. I think Islamic fintech, this is the first year we're doing it, so hopefully we can get more interest, get more traction with the audience today, and maybe get more people think about it. As we think about it, I think hopefully we'll spark some new innovation and bring more people into this space, and hopefully then we can help any area that we wanted. Another area we look at is the halal economy. If we talk about Islamic, right, it's not just food alone. How can we be play our part in terms of providing either financing part, or we actually help the sector how it grows?
I think back to Islamic finance, more investment options, and now the rise of digital assets, and certainly last year we could see the announcement of it being permissible, right? How do you see this area within the Islamic finance? Will it rise further? Will it be getting traction from Sharia compliant investors on this piece?
Yeah, I mean, we have heard on the first day there are some discussions on it. I mean, it's very encouraging. I think we should do more. Again, I think we are taking some baby steps forward here. I think there is some adoption issue. So I think we need to, again, we need to look at the people, let's say fundraising, right? So does that make sense in terms of, although it's now we have the SCxSC have rule that is Sharia compliant. So can we get the people who wants to participate in this from issuer as well as the investor? Now, obviously, this is a very new space, so there is some education required. So I think this is an area where we need to educate more, getting more people understand this particular topic better. I do have hope that we can continue to progress this and hopefully help get more people on board to understand, appreciate more how the digital asset can play its part within this space.
Right. So closely related to this, there is a question saying that Singapore and Dubai have been in the forefront in leveraging crypto and positioning themselves as the global crypto hub. So what's the SC response in this regard?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, different market play our strength. I do think that we have our unique propositions. And if we go back to what I talked about the CMP3 earlier, from SC, we have a unique Sharia, SRI, and ESG, right? So I think we have that unique advantage. We hopefully leverage that leadership position, and now we're adding the element of fintech. Again, crypto, no crypto, I think it is still, I mean, jury is still out there in terms of how do we adopt this. I do think that there is a role to play. I think, again, fundamentally, I will still go back to how does it make it relevant to our local economy, especially in the today recovery, right? So I would say pay a lot of attention on the micro and SME and the MTC and our investor. We can't be doing this for the sake of, we just want to be the first of something. But I think we want to see if we want to do this, so say tokenization, can it help our domestic industry in terms of whether it's a fundraising, or does it provide investment return for our investors, safe return and all. So from that standpoint, I would really focus on what is the product itself relevant to what we are doing now. Again, I think there's much to learn, no doubt. I think from a crypto space, I'll be the first to admit that there's still much more to learn. How we will be trading it, how do we make it relevant is something is high on our agenda. We just need to think through, and I welcome any ideas and suggestions. I know many of you have interacted with us through the Affinity program, is our fintech outreach program. I think love to hear more ideas.
Okay, there is a question which says that is staking in digital assets or coins permitted under our laws? Sorry, which one? Staking in digital assets, to stake the coins, stake digital assets. Yeah. Is it permitted under our laws? Yeah, I mean, again, this one permitted is obviously if it so I would say group it, if it's just doing as a custodial services, obviously we have a guidelines for digital asset custodian. If you are staking it for some sort of return like compound or Aave, or if you're staking it for swapping for a current different assets, then obviously these are all regulated activities, right? So again, all these will probably come under, depending on what are you considering, what are the considerations for this. Again, there are some clarity that I believe we need to provide to the industry, which is something in our internal deliberation right now. Again, some of these areas, we do want to clearly identify who are the people providing the services, and how can we provide safe and transparent manner and ensure there's a market integrity and investors are protected accordingly. So these are the area of consideration for us as we think through. Okay, so we've got a lot of questions on the crypto market, digital assets. Okay, popular question, and I'm sure you know that this question is coming, right? What is SC's view on DeFi projects? Do they fall within capital markets? Yeah, like I said, I think this one, I would say that we are still further seeking the clarity in terms of what the activity is. I think I recognize that DeFi is a broad project. I think it's, again, some of the key considerations when you think about the governance point. For example, most of the DeFi, no doubt that there's an initial founder or the founders, and they don't really have control of it. So how do you look at the control? If there is errors or there are misbehavior, who will be accountable, who will be responsible for this? Again, what particular characteristics of the instrument being offered, and that is also a consideration. Again, who are the principals involved, what the legality and the regulatory remit within that,
These are all the considerations that we all need to think about, and we are still thinking through some of these topics, and this is an area where again we probably need to think through and then and provide clarity to the market later.
Now back to crowdfunding, ECF and all that. There have been questions as to when will the 20 million funding, the raise in the funding limit kick in?
Yeah, it is announced earlier in the year, and I think I was involved in the, if there is a need for the higher fundraising limit, I think we can definitely write in, and then a lot of these we have been interacting with operator who has actually asked for exception. But in terms of the guidelines, I think it should be out within the next few weeks. And then again, if you worry about the fundraising limit, I think I have not seen too many. I think I've seen like 2 cases, and they have been facilitated as far as I know. So I don't think it's an issue unless otherwise. Yeah.
All right. I think I can cluster the next few questions. They've been asking about, is it against the law to trade in unlicensed or unregulated exchanges? And then followed by a question as to, the Binance, why did we not register Binance?
Yeah, I mean, as an individual, I mean, caveat emptor, right? So if you decided to trade in you personally put your money in there, I think you should be aware that they are not regulated, and you should understand the risks involved as an individual. We obviously, if the unlicensed entity come into a local market to start to market themselves and put themselves up as providing that services, then obviously we're duty bound to regulate them. Now, you will say, reverse inquiry, I'm going to register and trade in a US broker. There's nothing particularly stopping you from doing that. You, as an individual, as an investor, you just need to be aware of the risks involved, right? Caveat emptor, so you need to know what you get yourself into. But if there is an entity or conducting regulated activity in Malaysia, then whether it's SC or other regulated Bank Negara and others will then be duty bound to make sure that that activity is regulated. Sorry, you have a question on I think Binance. I think we have gone through several. I mean, many of you know. I think in the 2019 when the prescription order, I think we have reached out to everybody who are on the list. We have encouraged everybody to apply and come to us. Obviously, they have not. And they continue to conduct those activities during that period. As such, much like I said earlier, to conduct those activities, you need to be regulated, and obviously Binance as entity have not done so. As such, then we will have to take certain actions.
The next question, there's a lot of digital assets question, but this is a question of categorizing digital assets, whether they are securities or commodities, because NAS asked the question, virtual currencies like Bitcoin have been determined to be commodities under the Commodities Exchange Act in the US. Why are they securities in Malaysia?
A different rule of the law of the land will dictate. I mean, I'm quite sure US SCC will do their Howey test and all. Again, like I said, I think the way we have carved out very simply, if you look at the prescription order between us as the Section 6, Sector 6 in the Bank Negara prescription order in 2018 versus ours in January 2019, we're all looking at the regulated activities. So the activity is whether it's, I say, fundraising, secondary trading, holding the custodial services. These will come under within the regulations. Okay, and are there any thoughts for RegTech or SupTech developments by SC in the near future? Yeah, I think if you guys listening to the sessions earlier, I think
yesterday, right?
Yeah, we are definitely encouraging RegTech. Again, different country, different adoption. Again, we have a bit uneven. So we have people who have regional and international presence. Because of the parent group have actually adopted that, using some sort of RegTech. Then they may be a bit further ahead. This is an area where we're actually trying to encourage our intermediaries or our operators to adopt technology such a way that they can be better at their compliance, be able to actually keep up with the pace of change in terms of technology. For some simple things like KYC, regulatory reporting, to some of the middle office, risk management, compliance capabilities. So all these will be technology that we encourage our industry to adopt. Is an area where we wanted to kind of build momentum. Number of the advanced jurisdictions have considered RegTech, and we want to actually encourage again the industry to help our regulatory to do this technology better. Is not a must, but I think going to this definitely we see a lot of benefit in helping many of our regulatory to do so. SupTech is very SC internal. I think we also need to keep up with the change of times. So we need to use technology better, whether it's advanced analytics, whether it's machine learning, whether it's allow us to get better market insight in terms of product design, in terms of supervision work, in terms of enforcement, is something we also continue need to upscale and improve ourselves. So we are also internally taking on our own internal SupTech initiative.
And now a question on social trading mimicking, right? Does it fall under any particular regulations?
Well, I mean, trade mimicking or social trading. I mean, if you're doing trading, let's say you trade, if you trade equities, so that would easily fall under the online broking or broking in general. There is an element that we probably need to be very careful depending on what particular model you adopt, right? There's an advice component of it. So how does that work out, right? I think the individual, so the trade mimicking, is it follow the individual? Are they providing that advice? So there is the two component. One is the intermediary function is providing the trading. There is the advisory component, whether you're providing recommendations and all. So I think a lot of this will come under the remit. Again, depending on your particular model that you adopt, we will be happy to engage in a conversation, I think, which we have actually in some of the parties who have already come forward, is about what particular model you're facilitating.
Back to the business model, what sort of components of the regulated activity is being triggered by virtue of that business model? So crypto related again, will there be a scenario whereby cryptocurrencies are banned in our country? Well, it's quite a
I don't have crystal ball in front of me. I think for now, I think digital asset as we see it, again, there is different definitions. Are you talking about currency? I think obviously currency will come under Bank Negara. There is the Currency Act 2020 that you need to look up. Again, I think as far as we are concerned now, I think digital asset, if you use for fundraising, to do a secondary trading, I think is something permitted. We would like to see to continue to facilitate. Again, this space moving very fast, so we'll probably need to continue to track and monitor. As far as we are concerned, I think right now, the regulatory framework, the legislation supports what we are doing now.
Okay, so this is back again. I thought you answered this quite clearly before, but still people are asking why only 5 coins in 2 years. For example, he quote that we have 50 plus IPOs this year, but 0 coins added. Actually, we just add a coin in July, right? Is this really innovative? Why is the process of proposing additional coins so much more complicated than IPO? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I encourage people to read up the guidelines. I think there is a criteria for that. I don't think it's any more complicated or any less complicated. Like I said, I think the goal here is, again, is a secondary market trading space, right? So we want to make sure there's sufficient liquidity and not actually create a space where actually there's an unfair trading environment. Again, there are some limitation to it. Again, it's about if the operator need to say, is it too costly to create a market locally here? There is that space, and as such, we encourage if there is a large demand, I think, based on, previously we have actually looked at the environment that our operator need to gauge, does it commercially viable and all to create this market. There's nothing stopping that, but I think there are certain limitations, and some of you would know those limitations. Again, we're seeing even if you look at the major market, you can't be just I want to do 5 transactions a year. Obviously there's a huge cost, and you find that it doesn't commercially viable to actually create such a market in Malaysia. So I think there is a bit more nuance to that, but that's kind of the overall consideration. Like I said, that's not even reach out to us. I think we have so far facilitated all the application who has come to us. Yeah.
That's a question. It's not really fintech related. Perhaps I can take this. Why is the SC not recognizing fee-only advisors who take no sales commissions, but recognizing so-called licensed advisors who take sales commission? I think we don't restrict the fees, type of fees that they impose. Some of them do have a combo of commission and fee, but it's really up to the business model that they propose, and the fees will correlate to the business model. So that question is being answered.
Yeah, I think there's no restriction in terms of, I think if you want to do, in fact, we encourage that if you provide advice based on fees and not necessarily tied to particular product or commissions, I think that's perfectly allowed and facilitated.
So there is this question on digital signatures. This person asked, anonymous, how can we talk about digital assets when Malaysia does not even recognize digital signatures? Even SC, is it something that is connected? Is it something that impacts?
I don't understand the question. Obviously, as a nation, we have the Digital Signature Act for more than 10 years now. Right? I think, just simple thing, when you do your LHDN submission, right, you also still need to adopt a similar digital signature. I think as a nation, we have, if you like, the legal regulatory framework for such a matter. In fact, I think last year, SC also provided further technical note and clarification, especially during this pandemic period, right, for our regulatory submission. We have actually even facilitated even further, what sort of, we encourage people to use commercially tools to actually do some of these things as they do regulatory submission to SC. I don't think there is an impediment per se. So not just us, but I think as a nation, we do have the legislation and the legal and regulatory framework that cover this. But maybe further clarity. Yeah, don't understand the question.
Yeah, I think it requires further clarity. A question on do you guys think it's a good approach to regulate local startups vis-a-vis foreign fintech companies, or give me a more leeway to the former, which is local startups, to support them better? That means differentiation between how we regulate our local. Do we need to boost our local first vis-a-vis foreign fintech companies?
Yeah, I think I don't know whether there's a specific angle to this, but generally I think the way we have done our assessment is based on the capability and competency, as well as the unique proposition to our market. Yes, I think there is that element of if you're providing, a lot of times I would say many of our local providers actually have a great insight, and as such we'll see more local providers in our space in this because they provide that unique insight and value proposition to the market. But generally we are assessing based on capability and competency, that again, as a regulator, we want to make sure we don't gauge winners or losers, but we do actually want to make sure the provider have the capability and competency to operate this regulated activity in our space.
We have maybe 5 more minutes. I mean, there's still a lot of questions. You see, maybe I think we need to have you every year. So, okay, back to NFT. Will there be, I mean, we've talked about it, we've talked about the need for us to monitor the space and all that. Will there be clearer guidelines on NFT? Will each platform require approval before respective native tokens can be used for trading and custodial service?
Yeah, I think again, depending on the token itself, right? I think depending on what are you offering. I mean, if you if it's just NFT, as far as I know, I mean, if it's just based on art or collectibles and all, they are not really securities per se. I mean, the piece of art is not securities. But if you are financialize it or make it a financial instrument, then where we will need to step in. If you just auctioning, this is the value, and that to my mind, again, I think it depends on the details on what you are doing. I give an example. I mean, the earlier I gave an example. It become more like a collective investment, right? I think you kind of pool the money together to buy something, then obviously there is that element, because again, our mandate in terms of investor protection, or some of these things, you pool the money and then you start to provide return or dividend and all, then you may become a financial instrument itself. Again, I think you probably need to look at a case-by-case basis, but generally, if it just what happened on today, either open seas or Rarible and there's it's just today, it's just a a piece of art or your cyberpunk or cyber kitty that you buy, sell, or the tokens you bought from a game site. It's to me it happens naturally, so it's not really we're like I said, we will only step in when there is an investor involved and there is an activity that we need to make sure that our market stays protected and the integrity is protected.
Okay, so maybe there's time to just answer 1 or 2 more questions. This is in relation to IEO. Someone is asking, is there a timeline for IEO operators and whether any RMO applicant have been successful to date for the IEO?
Yeah, I think there are numerous of them is under review right now. I think we're going through the assessment process. There's a feedback process, and we have provided that. There are some that who has failed the application. We have duly informed them. I think we are now progressing in the, I would say, final stages of the assessment, and we are still kind of iterating and in discussion, and hopefully we'll come to a final conclusion soon.
Now with and in relation to RMO still, one is asking whether there is a max of the number of RMOs to be appointed to operate the DEX. When do you expect, is there an opening up of, having more DEX operators coming in or not?
Yeah, I mean, as with all our, as you guys follow us, I think we have, 3 rounds of equity crowdfunding and then 2 rounds of peer-to-peer. Again, in our typical process, we run the application process, then we let the market operate a while so that we make an assessment, and then we will look at the value proposition, where the market takes, and then again, this is a very nascent stage, and then we will run to continue gauge. I mean, I would say that maybe in the future, when we look at how the market operates, there is a need. I think we already have 4 operators now. I think we just need to gauge where the market takes us. I don't see why not. And like I said, it's depending on how the market behaves. I think want to make sure that generally the market, we are sufficiently enough to support the how we we don't want to overcrowd, but we also don't want to be underrepresented. Again, is a developing stage, is a developmental activities. We certainly will welcome in the future, more players coming to our space.
Okay, so I think we've kind of run out of time. There's still a lot of questions, but maybe it's nice to just wrap up this question with a kind of projection of the future, or I know you don't have a crystal ball, but someone's asking, how do you see the Malaysia's fintech market in 10 years' time? Okay, maybe if
I can't see 10 years. I think the space moves so fast. I do think that we have the last 3-4 years laid the foundations for many of our regulatory framework. I mean, look at fundraising. I like to think that our funding escalator, as our internal parlance say, we have the framework to help our early stage and to some extent late stage and mature stage fundraising, and we probably put in place certain framework. I do see the next few years we are trying to broaden it, deepen it, and maybe make tinkle whether, from a sectoral perspective that we can help fundraise, or from geographic perspective. I know we need to do more work in like East Malaysia or East Coast. Right? A lot of our activity now very Klang Valley centric. We've got to do more. I think so that's an area in terms of the focus area and all we want to do. I think for peer-to-peer, I do see we need to institutional more. I think there may be a B2B market for the P2P space that we need to do more. So I think there's an area we do need to facilitate. I do see we want to facilitate more innovative businesses, right? Whether through tokenizations and all activity. I think we see a lot of that happen. From the digital investment management standpoint, you guys read the CMP3 and look at SPV. I think the whole spare change and the whole silver economy is an area we want to do. I think we should do more. I think our nation is definitely aging. By 2030, we will have certain group. So in that case, I think we do see product innovation, providing access to this generation, even vulnerable investor. I think is an area we want to see more. I think e-services platform, using many of the existing tech channels to make wider availability, accessibility of capital market product to people not just in urban but maybe rural. How do you provide that is an area definitely we want to facilitate more. In terms of broker fund management, I hope the industry come along the digitization journey. I see it would be great fund managers, brokers continue to embrace, not just convert, but I think adopt to do more. I think that's an area, again, like I said, we want to see more. Right? Lastly, I would say, echoing what we have actually stated in CMP3, we want to see a multi-layer market. So we want to have something for some people. There are definitely a lot of good growth area that we haven't really, barely scratching the surface. Right? So I think we want to see more, some part of this, I think I do see a positive outlook in the 3-5 years for capital market, a lot of growth. I think we just need to keep at it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Wei Min. I know you're very busy. I think everybody appreciates the fact that you have allocated some time to answer all these, very quite controversial questions, questions that needs clarity and all that. So thank you everyone for participating in this session. Do note that stay tuned, because we do have another very exciting session at, I think, 4:30, which talks about what it means to be human in the digital age. On that note, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wei Min. And I hope we've answered most of your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaughn.
Bye.
Bye.